The attack on Hinduism and its gods is nothing new. Everyone knows what the Abrahamic religions did, but very few are aware of the attitude of Buddhism towards Hindu gods. The Hindu god hate that the neo-Buddhist display is the same mindset that is being practiced by Buddhism from ages. Let's take a look at the love and mutual respect shown by the Buddhist text towards Hinduism. Iconography gradually entered Buddhism over a period of time, evolving as the religion spread to different regions and cultures. Early symbolism, 4th to 1st century BCE. In the early days of Buddhism, during the time of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, 6th to 5th century BCE, visual representations of the Buddha were limited to symbols such as the Bodhi tree, the footprint, the Dharma wheel, and the empty throne. These symbols conveyed the presence and teachings of the Buddha without directly depicting his form. Aniconic period, 1st century BCE to 1st century CE. During this period, there was a general avoidance of anthropomorphic representations of the Buddha, likely influenced by aniconic tendencies in Indian art. Instead, artists focused on creating symbolic representations, such as footprints and stupas, which represented the Buddha's presence and enlightenment. Emergence of anthropomorphic representations, 1st century CE. By the 1st century CE, anthropomorphic representations of the Buddha began to appear in various regions, influenced by Greco-Buddhist art and other artistic traditions. These early images depicted the Buddha in human form, often in a seated or standing posture. Spread to different regions, 2nd to 7th century CE. As Buddhism spread to regions like Central Asia, Southeast Asia, China, and Tibet, it absorbed and adapted local artistic styles, symbols, and iconographic elements. This led to the development of diverse Buddhist iconographic traditions in each of these regions. Development of Bodhisattva iconography, 3rd to 7th century CE. The concept of bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who delay their own enlightenment to help others, became prominent in Mahayana Buddhism. The iconography of bodhisattvas, such as Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri, evolved during this period. This is when it all started. The Buddhist monks, inspired by Hindu gods and goddesses, started creating their own versions and show Hindu deities in poor light. The Sadhanamala, our Buddhist text, is indeed a significant text in certain branches of Vajrayana Buddhism, particularly within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. It is a tantric text that focuses on rituals, meditative practices, and visualizations of various Buddhist deities and enlightened beings. It was composed by over several centuries and by various Buddhist monks. The Sadhanamala includes elaborate descriptions of the appearances, attributes, and surroundings of various Buddhist deities. Practitioners use these descriptions as guidelines for vividly visualizing the deity during meditation. These visualizations are intended to lead to a direct experience of the deity's qualities and enlightened nature. The fourth type of Havajra, according to Havajra Mandala, is 16-armed and is alike in appearance with the 3 other forms described before. The difference lies in his having 8 faces and 4 legs. With his 4 legs, he tramples upon 4 Hindu gods, instead of standing upon a corpse, as in the 3 others. His form is described rather elaborately in the mandala trampling Skanda Mara in the form of Brahma of yellow color. The second is Klesa Mara in the form of Vishnu of blue color. The third is Mrityu Mara in the form of Mahesvara of white color. And the fourth is Devaputra Mara in the form of Sakra of white color. This sadhana is silent about the prostrate figure of Ganesha, whom he tramples under his feet, thereby giving significance to his name as already indicated. It may be pointed out here that the god Ganesha, whom the Hindus consider to be the remover of all obstacles, is regarded as the most dangerous obstacle by the Buddhists. As to the origin of this god, there runs a Nepalese legend that at a certain time an Odiyana Pandit was performing a tantric rite on the bank of the Bagmati river near Kathmandu in order to obtain Siddhi. Ganesha, it is said, being strongly opposed to the idea, began throwing dangerous obstacles in the way of the due performance of the rite. The Odiyana Pandit, finding himself helpless, invoked the god Vignantaka, the destroyer of all obstacles, and lo, Vignantaka appeared in a fierce and terrible form, armed with destructive weapons, and gave hot chase to Ganesha, who was by this time flying in terror, and in no time overcame the latter. In the statuette illustrated, it may be seen how Vignantaka is trampling heavily on Ganesha, and the latter, in order to keep up the dignity of his godhead, exhibits the Abhaya pose even in his agony. Vajra Hunkara. His two hands carrying the Ganta and the Vajra are locked in the Vajra Hunkara mudra. He tramples upon Bhairava in the Pratyalida attitude and inspires awe. Vajra Jvalanalarka. Only one sadhana in the Sadhanamala describes his form. He is four-faced, eight-armed, stands in the Alida attitude, and tramples upon Vishnu, who is accompanied by his wife. He is blue in color and has a terrible appearance. Trilokya Vijaya. He stands in the Pratyalda attitude, tramples upon the head of Mahesvara with his left leg, while the right presses upon the bosom of Gauri. We can clearly see that how Trilokya Vijaya is trampling upon the head of Maheshwara with his left leg, while the right presses upon the bosom of Gauri. Aparajita is yellow in complexion, two-armed, one-faced, is decked in various gems, and tramples upon Ganesha. Her right hand is raised, displaying the act of dealing a slap, while the left carries the noose round the raised index finger against her chest. Her face is awful, terrible, and ferocious. She is the destroyer of all wicked beings, and her parasol is raised over her head by the host of wicked and ferocious gods, Brahma and others. Numerous instances from Buddhist texts can be cited wherein Hindu deities such as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Lakshmi, Ganesha, and Indra, etc., are portrayed in undignified positions underfoot. Texts such as Sadhanamala were authored by Buddhist monks who lived many centuries after the time of Buddha. Vajrayana practitioners demonstrated a notable aversion towards the deities of the Hindu faith, and this sentiment is evident in numerous statements by various Vajrayana authors within the Sadhanamala. It serves to illustrate that the might of the Buddhist deities is portrayed through the act of overpowering and holding the heads of Hindu deities, thus revealing a profound animosity toward the latter. Their antagonism wasn't limited to just Hindu deities. This antipathy extended to members of other religious communities as well. It's reasonable to assume that this hostility wasn't confined to their textual expressions alone, but could potentially have manifested in the destruction of various temples during that era. There exist some neo-Buddhists who assert that Hindu deities, such as Lakshmi, Ganesha, and Vishnu, were appropriated from Buddhism. Now you know how silly their argument is.